mystery and horror, the air itself is filled with monsters.
Children of the night, what music they make. He's alive! He's alive!
All good. Hey everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Monsters Up North podcast. It's a monster podcast. See, I told you I'd mess it up. This is where the Monster Squad will assemble to discuss all things monster related, either Hollywood monsters or even maybe real life monsters. I am your host, Sam. And I am joined by the amazing Dan from Bleeding Marvelous. Yay, say hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
We were meant to be joined by Peaches today, but unfortunately she has had to pull out due to unforeseen circumstances. But we do love you, Peaches, very, very much. And we will have you on at some point, even if it's just to do Creature 2.0.
If we forget anything.
If we forget anything. But I have literally just given the first episode away. It is Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Bum, bum, bum.
I mean, if you couldn't tell by Dan's amazing backdrop, because that girl knows how to do a backdrop. All Creature. I love it.
I'd be a shit car model, wouldn't I?
Hey. No, I think you'd be a great car model. So we're going to go and do Creature from the Black Lagoon, which was released in February 1954, as I look at my notes. It scored 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not a bad rating for a movie that came out in the 50s. It stars, now you'll have to bear with me, it stars Julie Adams as Kay Lawrence, Richard Denning as Dr. Mark Williams, Richard Carlson as Dr. David Reeves. Now I'm going to hopefully not butcher this name. Rico Browning? Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I pronounce it Rico. Yeah.
He was the underwater creature and Ben Chapman as the online creature.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question I'm going to ask, and this will be the first question I ask on every one of these podcasts, is what makes Creature a great monster?
Ooh. I think I'm going to go with the fact that this predated most of the underwater terrors that we now know. It predated Jaws, which is obviously the biggest water-based monster. That if anyone was to say, name a sea movie with a monster, people go straight to Jaws. The only thing like it but wasn't underwater similar to it was Lost. It was one of the Planet of the Lost, Lost in Time, something like that. It was these amphibious type creatures, but none of them went under the water. So it was revolutionary for its time because it was the first movie filmed underwater in 3D. So it was, everything about it was absolutely unheard of. And people liked swimming back then. They liked going in lakes, and then they got scared to go in the water. And it did so many things to shock people. And that's why Creature was good, because he was just so ugly.
Yeah, he's not the most, like, aesthetically to look at him, he's not the prettiest. However, he is the scariest, he is the tallest, and he's a very different monster than what you get as in your Dracula, as in what you've seen before. You've got to think this is 1954. There's not been a lot of monsters brought to the forefront, and Creature is something so different.
Yeah, because I mean, you had obviously Dracula was very eloquent and suave and charming. Yes. And Frankenstein, depending on which version you go with, was more loquacious. He was from nothing. He started that he could grunt and say stuff, and by the end he could hold a conversation, and it was all about him learning and things. And then you get as far as the creature, and it's like he doesn't say a word, not
No.
one word, and it's just his presence.
His whole mannerism, just even standing in one position, is breathtaking. We'll probably get into this later on, but the underwater scenes alone are absolutely stunning. And for it to be actually done in a suit, there's no CGI, there's no special effects. That is full-on proper prosthetic makeup underwater. It's crazy to think that they could do that in 1954. Love it. So I have one of my first factoids, which my husband blew out of the water when I told him it. But I didn't know this, but the creature was actually modelled after the Oscar statue.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I knew it. And basically, one of them had been nominated for an Academy Award, but they hadn't won it. And he'd seen the silhouette on the
it was
certificate.
on a card or something that you've been nominated, and it had it at the bottom.
Yeah. And the thing was, when you see the first head sculpt of this was before Millicent Patrick, but we'll get into that bit later, I think. When you see the first head sculpt of the creature, oh my God, they clearly based it on the smooth head of the Oscar. So it had no gills, it had no pronounced lips,
no texture or anything.
Oh God, it was bloody awful. And I swear to God, if that thing came towards me, I'd be more scared of that than I would of him. it was awful. It was like they were really trying to stick with that aesthetic, which I do think they achieved from the head down. You can see it, from the head down. They did good. If that's what their aim was.
Well, Anth was saying, "Oh, it's just a person. It's no different than," and I was like, no, because there's a certain look to an Oscar. And now that I know that and looking at scenes within Creature, I can see that silhouette. I can totally see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did not know that. I have learned a lot today, by the way, everyone.
Yeah, I actually did when I was doing a bit of research as well, because it turns out, I mean, over the 3 movies, I know technically the second 2 don't exist. in my opinion,
which I only learned about today.
Yes. Some of them, the third one in particular, is trash, but it's very much influenced when you watch it. It very much influenced Jaws 3D you watch I can't remember. It's like The Return of the Creature, or that's the second one, I think.
The Revenge of the Creature.
That's
so the second one was The Creature Walks Among Us, and the third one was Revenge of the Creature. So you've got Creature from the Black Lagoon at 80% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah,
brilliant. Then you've got The Creature Walks Among Us, which is sitting at around 40, maybe 30, if my memory serves me right. But then you've got the next one, which is it's really in the low figures.
Ooh, it stunk. I mean, when you see it, it's like over those movies, they didn't improve storyline. It was literally that's a great movie, let's capitalize on it, let's bang out some sequels. Doesn't matter what we do, because this film is so good, it will be fine.
Yes.
So they ended up having 5 creatures, 5 people playing the creatures over the 3 films.
Wow.
Because what they didn't credit was Rico Browning. If you go back and watch the credits, he never got a credit for the first movie.
Oh.
He got a question mark, like Boris Karloff did, and Bela Lugosi got a question mark.
Right.
And he said that he wanted billing in the next 2 films, because how could he ever find work if no one ever believed that he played the creature? Yeah. So, but yeah, it's the 5 actors was Ben Chapman, who we know was the land creature, and Tom Hennessy and Don McGowan. All 3 of those played the land creatures, and Rico played the underwater creature for all three of them, and a guy called Ted White did all the stunts. So I don't know how they quantify stunts in that, because to me what Rico was doing was all stunt work, because he was practically drowning himself on a daily basis just to get these shots. So, But yeah, it's crazy.
That is some stunt work, because the underwater scenes in that movie are some of the most impressive and most beautiful sequences that you, and to do the into fact that you've got him and her mirroring each other, it's just it's so breathtaking. Honestly, if you've not seen Creature from the Black Lagoon, why are you here? But also go and watch it.
Yeah.
It's not the longest of films, but and honestly, the story itself is quite forgettable for me. It's more the interactions between Kay and the creature. Kay being on that boat when the creature's there. Like, that's some of the most scariest bit of cinema I've ever seen. And I will watch anything horror related, but just the fact that the water is calm.
Yeah.
He is in that cage and his eyes are just above the water line. And so everything's kind of like magnified underneath, but you just see his eyes perfectly, and it's so calm and so still. And you're like, oh, when is he going to break out of there? Because he's going to break out of there.
I mean, it didn't take much, did it? Let's be honest. But
no.
yeah. I mean, something I learned as well was about the suit work, because in the first one, Rico Browning stood under 6 foot. So they had to make 2 suits, one for Ben Chapman, who was 6'4", and one for Rico. And if you notice, which is something that not a lot of people do, when you look at the land creature compared to the sea creature, there's more chest plates, in that section in the middle.
Yeah.
Because they had to extend it, because when Ben Chapman stood in the full creature outfit, he stood at 6'7".
Wow.
That's why he looks so tall.
Yeah. Okay.
So they had to multiply the chest, that chest section.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see him in the water, I think he's about 3 or 4 less in the water than Ben Chapman on land, but you don't notice because it's in proportion.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. And also I found out that at the time, each suit cost $15,000 in 1954. But when you do the translation into today's money, it works out at, let me look at my notes, around £135,000 each to make each suit by today's money.
Jesus Christ.
And when you hear an interview with Rico Browning, he said basically it was a leotard that they glued polystyrene foam on, and they burnt me all the time with the glue because it'd go through the leotard onto my skin and it would burn my skin. And like he was like, I've still got scars to this day. Well, he passed now, but
I was just going to say, I'm sure we lost him last year. Was it this year?
It was this year. Yeah, it was only about a couple of months ago, I think, maybe February time. But
don't think there's any cast surviving now.
No, but yeah, sad. He was saying that for what it was, when you look at today's standards of movie monsters and movie magic, he said it was just foam. The foam padding that they carve out and then they mold, and it was stuck on with like Evo stick or something.
Yeah, you wouldn't be seeing that on Face Off, would you? In this day and age. But that's so funny, because I think I mentioned on the Monster podcast that we did. If you've not seen it, I will add a link to that episode because it was absolutely fantastic. I talked about Jack Pearson.
Yeah,
Jack Pearson, and his method of makeup was literally glue and stick, and that's what he did to Lon Chaney Jr. with the Wolfman. So that must have been a universal method of doing makeup. We'll just stick it where it needs to go.
He was actually saying as well, though, that they made the foam latex suit because it would fare better under the water. But the problem was when they filmed a lot of the underwater scenes in Silver Springs, I think it was Silver Springs in Florida. Yeah. They had turtles that were in the water. And he said he felt a tugging during they were recording a scene, and he felt a tugging on his leg, and he turned around and a turtle had taken a chunk out of his heel of the foot prosthetic, taken a massive chunk out of it, and was swimming off with this prosthetic in his mouth.
God.
And they had to chase the turtle, get the prosthetic back and stick it back on because they didn't have enough money to make another foot. So
and this is Universal Studios.
Yeah.
You would think they would have some amazing money. I think that's all you're going to hear from us throughout these factoids is, that's crazy.
What?
Well, Here's factoid number 2. Now, this one really interested us. Boris Karloff was offered the role of the creature, and he said, absolutely not. I, again, did not know that. But it makes sense because he was Universal's golden child.
Yeah. He was the poster boy. He was the guy that he'd done so well with bringing Universal forward.
Uh-huh.
It was a no-brainer for Universal, but he was like, I don't think so.
No, it was the prosthetic side of it. He said that was the turn off point. Because again, it's another character that is heavily made up. Like, you're not going to see him. So I can totally understand at that point. Like, yeah, I'm not doing it. But I had no idea Boris Karloff was like it was even considered.
Yeah, when Boris turned it down, they then offered it to Glenn Strange, and Glenn Strange took over from Boris Karloff playing Frankenstein after Karloff, and he was like, "No, I don't swim. I don't go in the water. I'm not doing that." So they were trying to get that name or that provenance or that. They were trying to bring the success back, I think, because I think it had tailed off slightly towards the beginning of the 50s.
The only reason I know that because of who the makeup artist is at the time of Creature, because it's not Payson anymore. We've now got Bud Westmore.
No,
so yeah, exactly. So yeah, we have a Westmore involved. So I know at that point things are not great for Universal and where they're at. We might as well get into it. The most controversial thing that comes out of Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is so funny because it's only been the last few years that it's actually being talked about, is the fact that was she the designer? She was the designer of Creature. So kind of like concept artist, molder. It was a woman who did it, who was Millicent Patrick. And if you've seen any podcast where I have spoke about Creature, I will bring this up because I feel it is so important that this story is told to the masses. She was the designer, the concept creator, and she was doing an amazing job. She sculpted it. It was perfect. Everyone loved it. Everyone loved her. She was going on press tours. They were really putting everything into Millicent Patrick was going to bring the crowds to the cinema to see this movie. And Bud Westmore sat back and went, I'm not having this. I'm not having this. I'm not having a woman take credit. And he...
How dare she?
How
dare she?
And he put his big boy pants on and threw his name out there, because let's be honest, a Westmore, it meant something back then. And he kind of got his way, and Millicent was taken off the press tours, and Millicent was put into obscurity to where nobody knew that it was her who did all the work, but it was Bud who was taking all the credit.
I saw an interview with Rick Baker, and he was talking, and I hate this guy, but I'm saying it. He was talking with Joe Rogan, and I don't like saying his name out loud because he's like Beetlejuice, he might pop up, but like, and Rick Baker was talking about Millicent, and he was making it very clear what she did, and he wanted to make sure people knew her name. And then he was saying that the way about Bud was, what he used to do was he used to send people home half day. He used to say, right, everybody, you can all go home. You've done such a good job. And then what he'd do when they'd all leave is he'd have what he'd do was he'd have the press come in, and he'd tour the press around the sculpting room and stand there with really inappropriate tools with for the job of the sculpting that was happening that he was posing with. So he would try and take credit, because he used to do it with a guy called Chris Mueller.
Oh, I know that name.
Yeah, he helped Millicent with the final head sculpt. So he was the one that put the bladders behind the gills to make them flap. They worked in tandem. He worked off of her drawings. So watching what Rick Baker had to say about Bud Westmore, it wasn't nice.
No, and I think I've heard Tom Savini saying, or maybe it was Rick Baker who was saying nobody would hold a sculpted knife the way that he does, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Like,
it was
so
really
fake.
inappropriate. It looked really off, like, to anybody who knew in the business, the way he was holding things. It never rang. It didn't ring true. They were like, yeah, no, he's a glory hunter, because that's what he was. He was just in it for the clout. So
he wasn't even. Do you know what? He wasn't even the nicest Westmore, and he wasn't even the liked Westmore. Nobody liked him, not even his family. He really didn't like him. He was a horrible person. But I found out about the Millicent Patrick story through the Mallory O'Mara, the lady from the Black Lagoon. Now, this obviously, it goes into the story of Millicent's work and what she did, but it also tells her life story. And it's all them two kind of have for nearly 100 years between them, they have such an interesting connective life that a lot of things were brought full circle for her. It's such an interesting read. She writes like she's talking just to you, and she's telling you the story. But Millicent used to live on the Hearst family plot in Los Angeles. Is it Randolph Hearst? Who so do you know Lydia Hearst? She's Patricia Hearst.
The name ring a bell, but off the top of my head, without Googling, I've gone blank.
I'm just going to make sure I've got this name right, because Anthony said the one thing I had to do in this podcast was make sure that I had names right. Hattie Hearst. She was the one who, it was the first time ever that Stockholm Syndrome was known. Right. She was the one who robbed the bank. She robbed a bank with a group of people, and she claimed Stockholm Syndrome for kind of occultism.
Yes.
Her daughter, their whole family Randolph Hearst had this huge, massive estate. They kind of run LA, and Millicent used to live on the grounds.
Right.
Her dad, I think, was an architecture firm. It's so interesting. The Hearst family it is crazy. But it's such an interesting read, because you do get to know that side of it, of her life. And the fact that she used to work for Disney. She was a Disney illustrator. Again, something she is not credited for. But she worked for Disney, and then she kind of went into obscurity.
Well, I heard that from all the stuff I watched. I don't know if it's in that book, but she was suspected as being an Italian baroness.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, and I was like, what? And she was like, "Oh, I can't be bothered with that life. It's not for me. I'm not gonna. I don't want to pursue that. I'm quite happy drawing."
She changed her name so many times.
Yeah.
It was kind of to fit the profession of what she was doing. That it got a bit convoluted.
Well, I heard that she was like I said, an Italian baroness, and I also heard that she was a concert pianist. At one point, she was pulling some amazing, great big concerts.
Yeah, I feel like that's true.
And then I heard that she was the first female animator for Disney.
Yes, that it wasn't just she worked with Disney, she was the first female animator, because it was all men. But she kind of her talent spoke, and she did as well.
Yeah, and the thing that made me laugh, which I found out, was that the studio took Bud Westmore aside, and they said to him, "Stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah,
we like the way this is heading. It's good for us. It's good for the studio. It's good for the film." And he said, "I'm going to sack her when this film's over, because I don't like the attention she's getting." So that's when it became the Beauty and the Beast argument.
Yes.
Whilst that had followed through, if you look at the theme of the film Creature itself, that's supposed to be what the theme is: the Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm.
But they then took that from the film and applied it to the Bud Westmore Millicent Patrick debacle. Yes. And she came out being the Beauty, obviously. So he wasn't liking it, and the studio said, "Don't do it." And he still fired her. Yeah. Straight after the movie, he still fired her. And the executives just weren't happy. But whatever reason, they still stuck with that numpty.
Because it's Westmore. It's not that, it's just the surname. It's the fact that they've got a Westmore. I can't describe how much pull those people had, because they were the first of their kind with the makeup they were doing. They were applying makeup that just wasn't wasn't used in movies anymore.
Right.
And they had such a pull, but again, Bud was he was not the boy. No one liked him. Universal kind of looked out that they managed to get a Westmore. It's just unfortunate it was Bud. Honestly, there is so many documentaries about just the Westmores alone, because if you watch Face Off, you'll know Michael and Mackenzie. Yeah, they are part of that program. And it wasn't like I never put two and two together until I started reading this book, and I'm like, okay, that's them. That's them. And then I went down like a massive rabbit hole, which probably everyone would if they start like getting into the Millicent Patrick story. But again, it was, I think Mallory was on a podcast, Tales from the Boo Crew, and I was listening to her talk about Universal Monsters, and then this came up, and I was like, oh, okay. I've read it. My sister's read it. It is honestly an amazing read, and it's not a hard read either.
Yeah. You
could blitz it. I'm not the best reader in the world. I've stopped and started so many books in my time that I can't keep track of them anymore. But this one I read. So have you got any more facts? Because I'm running out.
I have a few. I have. Did you know that in the second film, it was Clint Eastwood's debut? Yes. Yes, I did. I saw the clip. I watched the clip of him playing the lab assistant or the lab guy or whatever his role was, and I was like, "Good God, that's bizarre." And apparently, is it? Don't come for me if I get this wrong, but James Arnold, the guy who directed it, the main director man, he hated him. He hated Clint Eastwood.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know why. They didn't really explain it. He was just like they said he was a bit too egotistical, was a bit too full of himself, and he wouldn't behave on set and things like that. Like he only had a tiny part, but he tried to make it so much bigger, and he wasn't having none of it. But I mean, at the end of the day, it obviously worked for him because he's Clint Eastwood. So
something paid off there.
Yeah.
But yes, I did know that because I had to reread that line a few times when I was looking it through, like interesting facts about Creature, and I was like, Clint Eastwood, as in like Clint Eastwood.
Yeah. I said,
I was
Clint Eastwood.
Like, really? I had to like keep reading it. Then I was like, surely he's like, this is not like his starting point. And it was.
It was.
And it was.
And I think that sequel came out in 1955. So we're talking
1956.
Yeah.
So, and it was in the works while this was still in production. They were thinking of the next one, because this is what we do in horror, and it's something that has continued through horror from the 50s onwards. You get an idea and you boom, 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 manufacture everything out. I know.
Sometimes just leave things alone. And I know I get stick for saying that quite a lot on the page, but just leave stuff alone.
I totally agree. I actually thought to myself, wow, what a God, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, what a monster to have just its own single film. Like, we've seen it in Monster Squad, which is fucking fantastic. However, he's not cast. He's called the Gill Man, which he is the Gill Man in this, but really he's Creature. But I thought, oh, well, how great is it? He's had his own standalone movie. Like, nothing's come after it, and then I read that there's 2 other sequels after it, and the titles, man, The Creature Walks Among Us and Revenge of the Creature, and the concept art, like the posters. That is awful. Creature. They're just trying to make him scary with each one, and they didn't need to because he was scary enough.
Well, in the last one, they cut off all of his gills and make him human. And honest to God, it's the worst thing you've ever seen. They dress him up. He looks oddly like Frankenstein because they give him these big square shoulders in a weird coat. And he goes and stands on the rocks and looks out longingly to the sea, but he can't breathe in the sea anymore because he doesn't have gills. and he looks like the Academy Award version of the it's fucking awful.
No.
When you see, I'm like, oh God, why you do this? Why?
Oh, it's so bad. They should just leave him be. I actually do have one more factoid, which kind of goes in with what we've just been talking about. That the creature was actually on an episode of The Munsters.
Yep. Uncle Gilbert.
Yes.
That's what that is. Yeah, that's what that is up there.
Oh, that's amazing. I had to go back and look at, because it's been a long time since I've watched The Munsters in its entirety. It's not like the Golden Girls where I go back to it like every year or something. It's something I will watch every maybe a few years. But yeah, I didn't know that he was it was actually Richard Hale.
Yep. Yeah.
Who was it was actually they credited him as Mask and Body.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a bit weird.
I don't know why they did that. But yeah, he's only in it for a small amount of time. I don't think he's in the entire episode. He comes to the door, he wants his money back that he's lent them, and that's about the episode, really, that I can remember. I haven't watched it, but for years. I've got it. I've even got the DVD box set and everything. But you're just like, I remember it. I've seen he had a bowler hat on, I think, if I remember at one point, and a 3-piece suit. The creature, and it was like,
that's like your worst nightmare, knocking on your door with a suit on.
That's what we're doing, are we? Okie dokie. So
yeah, that was one of my. When I read it, I was like, no. But then when I saw it, I was like, oh yes, I'm having a memory come back.
But that's the thing. The creature has set a precedent for. Precedent? What the hell am I talking about?
At least you correct yourself. I don't.
It's only because people come for me if I don't. He's just featured heavily in so many different connotations. I mean, you look at Guillermo del Toro. He has always been obsessed with H.P. Lovecraft. And so when he did The Shape of Water and he did the Hellboy, Abe Sapien and the Amphibious Man, they're clearly of the same race of whatever they are.
Absolutely.
But he took great inspiration from the Gill Man. And it's the same with Monster Squad, obviously the Gill Man there as well. And you can see it through film. Every film that has some sort of underwater creature has some sort of that they cross with a human, has some sort of creature vibe about it. There's something there that you look at and you go,
your
I see
creature.
what you did. Yeah,
I see that. I know. I watched Shape of Water this year actually, and it's one of those movies where I don't mean to put it off, but it's never in the forefront I have to instantly watch this. And I was really poorly one day, and I was like, I'm going to do it. I've got nothing. I want to do it. And it was one of the most breathtaking, beautiful, aesthetically pleasing movies I have seen in a long time. And I know it's been out for a while. I couldn't help calling the creature Abe.
Yeah.
Even though I know it wasn't, but it's just the look. And then obviously after I finished it, I get on IMDb, as I do after everything I watch. And he approached Universal to ask to do a creature from the Black Lagoon film, and they said absolutely not. So he said, not a problem, I'll do my own.
That's what you like, though. I mean, if you look at, I did a bit of research into all the people that have been offered to do creature movies over the years.
Oh, okay.
And we have in 1982, John Landis was approached to do a creature remake. Now, his success of American Werewolf, that was riding off the back of the American Werewolf. I don't know how that would have ended up. I'm not sure that was a good choice.
And only because, see, with John Landis, I can't get past Twilight Zone and what happened there.
With
and
the helicopter.
that probably clouds my judgment when it comes to him, because look at Thriller.
Yeah.
Thriller is a masterpiece, and that is through the eyes of John Landis. But I just, for some reason, on a personal level, can't get behind it, even though I really wish that whole helicopter thing didn't happen. I wish he wasn't an asshole, because that scene in Twilight Zone, his bit that he was, that story is amazing. Like, Vic Morrow is an awful person, racist as fuck, like not a nice guy, and he manages to throw himself into the worst parts of history and be approached by everything that he there's one scene where he's a black man, where he's a Jew, like he's thrown into the worst parts and treated the way that he's been treating these people for so long, and then it ends because the helicopter scene happened
and cut him in half.
Yeah,
with some kids,
with 2 children, and they broke child law labours.
They did.
John Landis was held personally responsible, and he got away with it. But yeah, my thing is cloud about, so I don't know how I would feel about that.
No, I mean, this next one I'd be very curious about. And in 1995, Peter Jackson was approached, coming off the back of Bad Taste.
So we haven't gotten King Kong yet, right?
No. So this is pre-Kong, pre-Lord of the Rings in 95, I think, as well.
Oh God, yeah, because it probably might have been in like some form of production, but it certainly wasn't. Yeah, if it's Bad Taste. I mean, you can correct us in the comments if we're wrong.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. But yeah, it was coming off the back of the success of like Bad Taste and Dead or Alive, or you know the films he'd done for that. And I don't know how that would have gone from the Peter Jackson of the early years compared to now.
Peter Jackson, yeah, because if you're going from New Zealand indie filmmaker making these gory as fuck horror, because let's be honest, Dead or Alive, it's one of my favorites. It has a special place in my heart, but it is very gory. And then you've got Peter Jackson after Lord of the Rings. Like, let's just class Lord of the Rings as the middle part.
Yeah.
Because after that, you've got King Kong, and that is like a CGI fuckfest.
Yeah.
So I'm not on board for CGI creature, but I think he would have gone gruesome with it.
I think it would have been a totally different type of film, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
In 1996, here's one that's going to blow your mind. Ivan Reitman was approached. Now, how the hell that would have gone, I do not know.
A comedy version of The Creature.
Like Bill Murray as the creature, Dan Aykroyd as the creature. I'm really not. I don't know how that would have gone down, but yeah.
Okay, I'm gobsmacked. I can't wrap my head around that pitch. Like, okay, Ivan, got an idea for you. You know, you've had your success with Ghostbusters, and I think you did Stripes. And then we're gonna, I think, don't come for us, people. But now we're gonna offer you Creature from the Black Lagoon, starring Bill Murray.
You can imagine the fish coming out, and he'll just smoke a big cigar or something when he comes out of the water, you know,
or even Harold Ramis as Creature from the Black Lagoon
with his big glasses on.
Oh my God, I can't even wrap my brain around how that would even come out on screen.
No. But I mean, none of these got very far. These were people that had been considered or talked about, but the only one that actually made it to a full script and having a director, all the people on board, but never got taken any further than that, was in 1992. They approached John Carpenter.
Oh.
And his angle on the entire film was making it tie in with Lovecraft. So he wanted to take the shadows of Innsmouth, the idea of the fish people, and make it like the deep ones had, you know, in the book, the deep ones, they sleep with the people of the town, so that the people of the town become these hybrid fish people that are intelligent like humans, but also they have the knowledge of the deep ones, and it's
I'm not like a Lovecraftian, but I have started to appreciate it more as an adult. My husband is very much like is it the Cthulhu side of things?
It's very heavy. His stuff is so heavy,
but I'm starting to like as a youngster, I was very much on the Edgar Allan Poe of life. Being the dirty god that I am. But now I'm getting a bit older. I'm starting to like, is it Reanimated?
Yeah.
It took me a long time to get the Lovecraftian in that. I now understand it.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a batshit crazy film.
Yeah.
But I kind of get it now.
With Jeffrey and Barbara.
I have him on my wall somewhere. He's right there.
I've got Jeffrey up here, and he signed a poster for me.
Oh, for fuck's sake, he's not signed on mine.
He did HorrorCon a couple of years back at Sheffield, and I went and met him, and I was really surprised because I'm 5'3", and he must have only been about 5'5", 5'6". He's tiny. When something really, like, I always have this thing that everybody surprises me how small they are, but like it's one of those odd things, because in my head everyone's always taller than me. So when I watch him on a film, I'm like, he's clearly 6 foot tall, and then I met him, and I was just like, I could pretty much. Yeah, there wasn't much in it, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't too bad."
He's got such an interesting face.
Jeffrey Combs,
very interesting face. I do love. He's staring at us right now. I do love that film. But them choices, I'm still like blown away. Like Peter Jackson, that's the one that kind of interests us more than the rest of them. Because just knowing what his horror background is like and what he can do, it just makes us think, like, what could we have gotten out of that? Yeah.
But none of them got as far as the John Carpenter one. And I don't know whether it was because Carpenter was coming off the back of... At that point, Halloween was well and truly dusted from his point of view. He passed it over. It was being flogged to death in 92. I think Vampires might have come out around then. God, I think it was around then. I might be wrong. It might be further on in the 90s or just before then. But he was still having quite good success with a lot of things. And he also, just a quick side note, if anybody ever wants to hear John Carpenter's music, it's batshit. If anybody does, because obviously, he does a lot of the soundtracks to The Thing, The Fog, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. He's actually featured on a track with Gunship, who I will champion forever and a day, even though Gunship aren't my type of music. They're like a electro 80s pop. Yeah. He did a song with them called Black Noir, and it's his synth, and he's like, and they're singing over the top, and honestly, they're worth a listen. It's a bit crazy. The videos all stop go animation and like plasticine and stuff, and it is really, really good. If anyone gets a chance to Black Noir, I think that's what
I've heard. He's a good performer, because that's what he did for a long period of time. He was just doing music and not really concentrating on films. But I will die on a hill, and I will do it single-handedly if I have to, for that movie Vampires, because I fucking love it.
I haven't seen it in years, but I know it's got James Caan in it. He was the James Wood. James
Wood. And
James Caan is Misery. James Woods is the other one. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I had a sudden urge yesterday to watch The Godfather.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know why. It's a very long film, and I sat and watched the whole entirety of it. And then totally forgot that James Caan passed away last year.
Yeah.
And I got saddened by that. No, James Woods and his amazing tight jeans.
How he moved in those, I do not know. I mean, he must have had
some bugger helping him get into them jeans, because they are tight.
Tight like a tiger.
Tight. And his leather jacket. I mean, he makes leather and denim look good. I'm not on a personal level, not the hugest fan of James Woods. However, in that movie, fuck yes.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it now. I think I haven't seen it in that long.
Oh, it's so good. He is so it's ridiculous, but it's still brilliant at the same time. So John Carpenter. So thinking of that, of the time, like the time era, I still can't picture how John Carpenter would approach it.
Go on, sorry.
Okay. No, sorry.
I was just going to say I think it would be a similar vibe as to the shape, how he was with Michael, where he would allude to it a lot, like they did in the original. It was sort of in and out. It wasn't like a thing, but if he was going to go full Lovecraft and bring in the shadows of Innsmouth and the fish people, it wouldn't have been a creature. It would have been a reimagining of a Lovecraftian version of the creature, of the universal monsters, of the John Carpenter land, of this and that. And that would have been, I think it just was too complicated to possibly pull off to the audience, because there was just too much there. There was too much in the way of ideas, and I think that would have been super expensive as well to have that many people, fish people at the time. I don't.
I'm still gonna champion Peter Jackson. Like, I'm still having this like thought in my head, like that would be amazing. But I've seen his work after Lord of the Rings, and I've not been to. That's not the Peter Jackson I remember. That's the Peter Jackson with money, and the Peter Jackson I remember was very much all about why is my brain not working? Like real prosthetics, like real what's the word I'm looking for?
A champion in like proper special effects and like prosthetics, and he was very much in the way of, he liked the visceral gore and the
practical effects. That's the word I'm looking for.
There you go.
You can see anyone watching back, you'll see my brain starting to frazzle, and it's like, you must get this. Practical effects. Is it Dead or Alive, or is it what else is it called? It's called something else as well. There's
Bad Taste, isn't there, as well? That he did.
Brain Damage.
That's it. Yeah.
Brain Damage. I think we got it as Brain Damage. Well, I certainly remember it as Brain Damage. That is nothing but practical effects and gore and mush and goo and a lot of it. Yeah.
A lot of bashing things on heads, if I remember rightly, like heads exploding and people
exploding.
It's been a long time, but yeah.
Oh, I watched it.
Was Derek in Dead or Alive? Who looked like Harry Potter, coincidentally, when you look back and look at Derek. He was his main guy in one of his movies, and I just
it's not Brain, because that's what is he called? He's called Lionel in that one, because one of the lines. It's the only reason I remember it for is because one of the lines is, "Lionel, your mom ate my dog."
Right.
Yeah, brilliant. That's the only reason I remember that one. But that is so interesting. I feel like I've learned so much from that. That was amazing. Well,
I also found out that in 1977 there was a book written which was like a reimagining of the creature. They reimagined him as a 30-ton hermaphroditic monster with a long tail that basically was the same size as the boat in the original, the Rita. Mm-hmm. They wanted to make the creature that big in this book. And it didn't even get past publishing, if I remember rightly, from what I've heard, because they said that how can you make something that's supposed to be humanoid into this big non-binary ship-sized monster with a tail? It doesn't translate. And they were like, you can't say it's the creature from the Black Lagoon if it's got absolutely no relevance.
Because it's fucking Godzilla.
Sorry. Well, they had a treatment for another book that was written, and they made him a telepathic alien in that one. So it was like, that. Leave it alone. Leave it alone.
Honestly, people are on some hardcore fucking drugs when they're writing this shit out. My God. It's like the time. Go on.
In 2009, right, I only found this out because I didn't go. I went to Universal Studios in LA in 2010, but I found out, had I have gone a few months earlier, I could have caught this. In 2009, the Creature the musical opened in Universal Studios Hollywood. It debuted on the 1st of July and closed on the 9th of March 2010. It only survived for 7 months. And I just cannot wrap my head around that one. Out of all the facts that I found, I was like, Creature the musical. I just know. Hmm.
A fucking creature going across the stage. I'm a creature from the Black Lagoon.
Doing the can. Doing the can off the stage, yeah. Oh, I don't.
Oh my god.
I would genuinely be intrigued to know if anybody has seen it in person and in real life.
Please leave in the comments. Even if you've seen a video of it, direct us to where it is. We need to see this fucking musical of creature.
It apparently 1,000% happened. I've not imagined it. I didn't make it up. It is there. It was where they now have like the Jabberwockies and stuff. So it's right across from where the Harry Potter part is in Universal. Right. So they had it in there in like the big, it's like a big auditorium section that's inside that they do lots of things on.
Well, it's like I don't know if you've been to Florida, Universal Florida.
Once, but I did horror Halloween night, so I went at nighttime. So
I haven't been to Florida in the last, oh my good god, maybe 20 years now. It's a very different place from how I remember it. But one thing that I do remember and cherish and know that I think it's gone now is the Universal monster makeup experience, where you get to sit in an auditorium and learn all about all this monster makeup. And not once did they mention the creature. Everything was werewolves. It was the talking point. I think Tom Savini is the host,
right,
on a video screen, if I remember rightly. And they talk about John Landis's American Werewolf and the werewolf transformation and how that's progressed from Lon Chaney Jr. to where they are. And it is really interesting. It was really interesting, and I sucked in every second of it.
Well, they've scrubbed, literally from Florida that I can see, they've scrubbed all of the Universal stuff, because they used to have the Monster Cafe as well.
It was just over the road or something, wasn't it? Something, it wasn't that far away.
Yeah, I only found out it went either over COVID or just after COVID they got rid of it.
That's so sad. It's so sad that such a huge starting point for Universal is the monsters. Mm-hmm. And they don't even acknowledge it.
They do in the LA one. You see, when you're doing the tour, they take you down this road and they've got all the movie posters from the start of Universal all the way up to the modern day, and they reference all the big films. So you've got Frankenstein, you've got Dracula, you've got, all the big ones all the way going down. But and they have, if you do the VIP tour, they'll talk you through and they'll take you places where they explain a lot more about where they shot the bits for the creature in Universal Studios. Mm-hmm. And they show you the lake that they filmed it all in and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it is sad. I think it deserves more, because they don't break out any attractions until Halloween Horror Nights. Is the only time you'll see at Universal LA the Universal Monsters walkthrough. That's the only time. And that's so
sad.
It's shit.
It is shit, because they are I can't think, when we were doing research for the Universal Monsters episode that we did, I can't remember seeing much before the monsters when it came to Universal Pictures.
Yeah. It was a lack of investment, and somehow this, oh God, Carl Lamar. I never. That's the one. I can't pronounce his surname. I couldn't pronounce it last time.
The only reason I know how to pronounce it, because on its Wikipedia, and I had to, when you got to listen to how it's broken down, I had to do that. And then he says it's Lumley.
Right. I will forget and say it again, I'm sure.
That was fine.
But yeah, he found a major investment. He either invested in it or he found investors to put this project through after someone gave him a copy of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein to read.
Right.
Obviously, Dracula had already been made, but Dracula had been made 2 or 3 times. I mean, at that point, Dracula had been done silent. It had been done in English, and then they reshot an entire Spanish version with totally different fluent Spanish actors, which they dubbed as well, which was bizarre. But it was becoming to a point of where they realized there was success there, but they hadn't quite broke it with Dracula. It hadn't quite got to the success that they wanted it to. So by putting the investment into Frankenstein, which they found and they did, they realized that actually everything going back, even Dracula was going to gain more popularity because people were finding that after watching Frankenstein, and the money that they spent on the set for Frankenstein, if you watch it compared to the set for Dracula, was so much more in general. So yeah, it was just investment. Purely why they
it'd be nice to have, because the creature feature would be amazing in a park. Or is that just someone who's a big fan would love to see?
Yeah,
I don't know. Do you think there's anything that in the future we would see from Creature? Or do you think, let's just leave him where he is, in his lagoon, chilling?
I think people, if they could do a practical version of the Creature, and they don't need to reimagine him too much. I mean, he is what he is. For all intent and purposes, he's a man and a fish. There's not really much more you can do with that.
No.
The rumor was that in the Dark Universe, with the new Mummy that came out with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
The rumor was Chris Evans was going to play the Creature and Scarlett Johansson was going to be Kay. So I am very glad that hasn't happened. Not because I don't like them, and I think they're both very good actors and actresses, but I don't see that. I mean, you don't need a buff Creature. You don't need it.
No, you just need it. He's slender. He's toned. He's not like beefed up.
Yeah,
that's just like I've got such an image in my head of like a beefed up creature. No, that wouldn't have worked.
No one wants to see Dame Judi Hench getting out of the water, do they? Like, yeah. No, thank you. Getting out and bulldogging at the camera. As the Creature, it's just not. I mean, no, thank you.
No. Personally, I would be happy if we never saw him on the screen again.
Yeah,
and that's putting it in the nicest way possible.
I think something like the Monster Squad, where they have him part of the gang of the original guys, where they stay true to the cheesy makeup, the cheesy Dracula, bogus Frankenstein, Wolfman's got nods, they keep that whole
nods.
They keep that whole tongue-in-cheek way about it. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But if they fiddle around with the design too much and they make it CGI, or they take away the practical elements, or they make it some preposterous story about like the ecosystem, which I feel like that's what would happen. It would become a cautionary tale for people treating the ocean badly. Okay, in real life, documentary, crack on.
Yeah,
but I don't want that for something that's been so adored to then be used as a poster guy for not tipping your shit in the river.
If you dump your plastic in the ocean, kids, this is what happens to you. And then Creature just appears. Hi kids.
Or if they make him talk, which I feel like I kind of feel like if it was Chris Evans, they would have made him talk.
Oh God, yeah, because you got to get paid by the word, don't you? So like, but that was going back to like Creature's aesthetic, that mouth when it does move. So there is movement in his face. He's not just completely static. If something came out of that and started talking, I'm out. I am out.
So I think if it was used in the same way as a tongue-in-cheek introduction to kids to horror, to like the Monster Squad, which I'm not saying remake the Monster Squad, I'm just saying something along those lines, I wouldn't have a problem. But
do not touch the Monster Squad, Hollywood. It is absolute perfection.
But please. In other words, I'm with you. I think leave it where it is. Let people have something that doesn't need to be regurgitated. I mean, it's one of the very rare films that they haven't done that with. I mean, Dracula. How many Draculas have we seen in different?
Oh, good God.
How many Frankensteins?
I find it surprising that Hammer Horror didn't touch it.
Actually, I'd never even thought about that. I'd never even thought about that they didn't bring him in.
And it's only because I can't think of the top of my head did they ever do, and I don't think they did.
I don't think they did.
Obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know. But look at what they were trying to do. They were like almost like they were universal monsters, but not. It was kind of like edged up, and it was in color, and Christopher Lee is that with blood and everything for Dracula. That was the first image that came into my head when I thought a Hammer Horror is Christopher Lee Dracula. I don't think they did a creature.
I don't think they did, because I'm trying to go through in my head. I have like a mental Rolodex of things, and like I'm thinking Peter Cushing, no, he did. He was that, and when you're going through in your head, and I'm like, definitely not.
They didn't touch it.
No, so they knew either it was far too expensive to try and pull something like that off, or it was just they appreciated it for what it was, and they thought, right, okay.
I'm going to go with the latter. I'm going to go with they appreciated it for what it was, because it is an absolute masterpiece. There is nothing from start to finish in this movie that you just gripped, because for me, like I said earlier, the storyline is quite forgettable. Like if someone asked me what they were there for, it's got something to do with a dig. And I've seen this movie 100 times.
Yeah. All I know is they find the fossil hand at the beginning, and then they become convinced that there's more or something out there that can help something, and then they go on a boat, and then a tree falls down, and then they're trapped, and that's where they are, and then they have to contend with the creature until such a time they can get away. I think,
and he steals Kay Adams into a cave, which is hilarious to watch, actually, because her flailing around is so funny.
Well, I actually, on one of the documentaries that I watched, Ben actually couldn't see where he was going when he was carrying her, and he whacked her into one of the rock formations, and she had her eyes closed because she was obviously pretending to be passed out.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a famous picture of her having a bandage put on her head when Ben's reaching down and he's all in the costume and he's talking to her. Because he said, I just couldn't see what I was doing, and I didn't realise how close I was, and I whacked her face into the rocks. So
it's not funny. Kay
no, it
Adams,
is.
She is absolutely beautiful in that movie. She radiates in black and white.
Yeah. There's something about that time, though. I think all women in that time, it didn't matter if they were large, small. There was there was just a sense of beauty. I don't know. Yeah, it was
beauty. Yeah, beauty within black and white. I think black and white can. I don't know. I don't want to say it can hide stuff, because I think it accentuates more than anything. And yeah, I totally get what you mean by that. Even the crazy lady in The Invisible Man, even she looks stunning.
With her mad screaming.
Hey, it's the Cockney accent for me. It's the police officer. Hey, governor.
What's
going on in here?
Oh, so many impressions.
I had to look up. Is this a comedy? It's not.
I can't wait if we get to that episode.
Oh yeah, well it will be soon, because it is happening. I've already told Graham we're doing Invisible Man.
All right, I'm gonna have to work on my impression of the old dear now, aren't I? So
yeah. So my last question. So the opening one is, what makes him a great monster? The last question is, why do you love him?
I always identify with the monsters. I always do. He was there first. Fuck off.
That was such a good answer.
It's his land. It's his place. It's his home. And you're invading his. If someone come in my house, I'd be pissed. Get out of my house.
I'm going to take your lady for coming in my house.
Yeah, tax. That's what that is. That's a tax. But yeah, get out of my house. That's what I have to say about that. So
I got to agree with the identifying with the monster. I have such a strong sense of, how Like they don't. There's all this stuff is happening to them, and they don't understand why.
Yeah.
Creature is no different than Frankenstein when it comes down to the understanding of what's actually happening. He doesn't understand why these people are in his water. Mm-hmm. He sees and he is attracted to, for reasons he probably doesn't understand, to this absolutely sensational woman who can swim just like he can.
Yeah.
And he is then more and more curious. I generally don't believe he took her away to hurt her.
No.
I just think he was so taken back by a creature, because remember, we probably look like creatures to him, that he was fascinated. He doesn't know the rights and wrongs and this, that, and the other. I have such a sense of wanting to comfort them.
Yeah. I just understand where they're coming from. I've always been someone who sits back and just goes,
I get your train of thought.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't ask to be, like, with Frankenstein and the Bride, neither of them wanted to be there. They were just made to fit some guy's ideology, and they were like, we don't belong here. We shouldn't be alive. I want to die, and it's like, I get where they're coming from, not because of any like suicidal connotations or anything like that, but they didn't ask for that. And they've been forced into a world where they didn't ask to be. And then with the creature, it's like you've come into their house. Dracula's a kind of different thing altogether, because
I get that, because I don't have a connection to Dracula like I do with the others, even Wolfman.
Yeah. He didn't ask for that to happen to him. Yeah.
No.
So it's all, that's why I love the monsters, because technically they're innocent people, to some degree, before they either turn into what they turn into, or they are made to be what someone else wants them to be, or they are found in the wild, or leave them alone.
I can find great sympathy with what situation they've been put in. That's the best way I can describe it. I am totally and 100% empathetic. I'm sympathetic. I am all the pathetic, just to be able to understand, like, just be on their wavelength. Like, I can't believe I sat and cried at the end of Frankenstein, all because of the way he was treated.
See, I laughed at the bit where
it broke my heart.
No, I am completely with you. I laughed at the bit where he killed the kid. He yeeted her in the river, and I laughed. But then at the end,
I love when you say yeet.
I'm trying to be down with the kids.
I love it.
But yeah, when he throws the girl in the river, and I mean, at the time you don't realise she's dead until like 10 seconds afterwards when the dad's carrying her out. But like,
oh, my child couldn't stand up in the water. That was probably a few inches to
exactly. And it's like, I laughed because it's so ridiculous, because he goes and then he walks off, and it's like, because it's childlike brain. He doesn't understand
no concept of what he's just done.
He thought she'd float like the flower, so he put her in the water like the flower. So, and then you see him at the end, and he's being lynched practically. And it's like, he actually understands what the feelings. He doesn't understand his feelings, but he comes to grips with the fact that he's not supposed to be there. He's not natural. He's not. He's not what everybody else is, and that's something. When you're a misfit kid, I think you can always identify with that isn't supposed to be.
Yeah,
you sort of fit in that little bracket of, but he's a bit of a weirdo, and I identify with that.
Yeah, you're standing at the top of that barn, and you have people with pitchforks and fire around you. I think we've all metaphorically been in that position before.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we're going to end on there because I said a long word.
Sold. The end.
The end. Well, thank you so much for joining the first episode of Monsters Up North. I will, by next week, have the opening down, because I have learned from the Game of Thrones one, I really need to be consistent, because it was different every week. I never got it right. But thank you for coming on and joining us, Dan. Dan's going to be here with me every week, talking all glorious monsters.
Lucky you people.
Whoop, whoop. And next week we will have the glorious Jake coming to join us, because next week's episode is Godzilla.
Hey.
So we're getting to talk about that big, scary dragon thing. I am going to admit that I'm going to have to do my homework for Godzilla.
I love Godzilla, so this is a good one for me. Love me a kaiju. Love me a kaiju.
I love that word. Yeah, so we're going to have Jake on to come and talk all things Godzilla. So again, thank you so much for joining us and joining us on this new journey. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It all helps. We have a bit of a schedule now. We have every Friday Goodwill and Captain Goodwill and Graham. I can't remember what Graham's name is, so no, I can't remember, but Graham is going to be trekking through the universe every Friday on our YouTube channel. Our live show is exactly the same as always, 7:30 on YouTube. This week is top 5 great. Oh, actually, it would have already aired because we are coming out on a Monday. So who cares?
Yeah, stop it. Ah!
So yes, and we will be coming out on a Monday, a Monster Monday. So that is our schedule going forward. You can find us on Facebook, our community pages on Facebook. Just look for Nerdy Up North. You can find Dan's Facebook page on... I was just going to say Facebook page on Facebook. That didn't sound right. You can find Dan's Facebook page at Bleeding Marvelous. All the links for everything will be down below. Remember, we are on our social medias, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and we play video games on Twitch. Did it. You did it. So thank you everyone for watching, and remember to tune in on next week for new Monster Monday. Stay nerdy, everyone. Bye.